Hey, this is John from Warbringer, and you are listening to Interview Under Fire.
All right, John, thanks so much for joining us today on Interview Under Fire. You know, last 2 months have been quite a roller coaster, not just for you guys, especially pretty much all the media world, including all of us. You know, how's the vibe over there in California right now?
It's a sunny day and I'm sitting at home, and normally in a roller coaster, I'm not just sitting at home all day, so I don't know if I'd even call it that. But it's very strange putting out a record, and then the record came out like just barely under a month ago.
Yeah,
and
April 24th.
I haven't. Yep. So we're nearly at a month from release, and I haven't played any of the songs live yet, and that's very strange for me. It's just really strange to not like put out a record and then immediately be doing shows, because that's what I've done the 5 other times I've put out a record. You know, as soon as that thing hits the street, you are out there promoting it, because why wouldn't you be? That's the entire business model. So we basically can't do our business model, which is kind of wacky. But, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't get into music because it had such a great business model. If you think about it, it's a fucking horrible business model. I'm going to make sounds that come from our brain, and you're going to buy them, as opposed to all the other sounds that come from all the other people's brains, because our sounds from our brains are just that cool and special. You know, what kind of a fucking business model is that? That's bullshit. That's never going to work. But here we are doing it, you know?
Man, I'm already thinking, like, as you're telling me all this information, we could just use that voice and just put an infomercial on everything you're saying. That right there, it kind of just exemplifies what the industry you're talking about, or industry, I should say, because it's just a broad term that's being thrown around back and forth.
Yep. And it's like, I never got into the industry, as they call it, to be in the industry. If people say the industry too much, I usually don't like them, as a matter of course. You know, that's just normal shit. Hey, I'm here for music. If you're here for industry, that's great. Why don't you go back to, like, you know, textiles or oils or steel or robotics or whatever other manufactured goods there are. But if you start viewing music as a manufactured good, fuck you. Get out of the building. You know, get off the fucking stage. You don't belong here. That's my view. Now, that's an unpopular opinion in a very commercial music society where, you know, most of the top 40 people know was written by guys in a boardroom that are trying to sell them the song they wrote, and they're okay with that. And that, you know, hey, market research won the top 40. Great job. Hey, if you repeat the chorus 4 times, it'll sell more than if you repeat it 3. Wow, every song should do the chorus 4 times now, you know, and so on and so forth. And I'm just disgusted by the whole thing, and that's part of why I'm screaming into a microphone going, "Ugh," in the first place.
Hey, that's okay. You're talking about.
It's
good. You're talking about what you're passionate about. That's okay. That's why we have this platform. It's for we have artists like you who are actually in their business, who do what they do for what they're passionate for. But yeah, there are the undertones, along everything that you do, and it's important to point them out.
Yeah, it's fucking funny, though, because regardless of me feeling like that, because I put my whole life into this, now I have to try to make a living with it, which means, like, to what extent do I compromise the reasons where I'm here in the first place? And I think that's a real challenge that every artist faces today, because of what I had just said a minute ago of how fucking terrible the business model is. You can't really sell records anymore. Record sales aren't like a source of revenue the way that they were, I don't know, in 1990 or something. And therefore, your business model is based more, at least in metal and rock and stuff, it's based largely on how much merchandise you can sell, touring and merchandise, basically. Yeah. Because unless you're like one of the top 10 bands in whatever major genre you're a part of, you're probably not making shit on record sales. So that's an interesting thing. And more or less, what's funny is by doing music the way I have, I've kind of demoted myself by a social class. My parents are like upper middle class and stuff, and I'm living in a 1-room house right now. So you figure, what does that make me? And that's kind of a choice that I consciously made, actually. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be as like successful in my life as every expectation of my family would lead me to have. But I have to be okay with that, or I can't actually be an artist. I have to bite that bullet, or I can't make art. And there it is. So
I mean, Yeah, I think what you're talking about, I didn't mean to cut off you there, but I think that goes into going towards what you're passionate for. You shouldn't it Of course, it's hard. Trust me, it's hard. I come from a family of, of wealthy individuals, and I'm over here doing what I'm passionate for. It's people like you who do what they do and give me a reason to do what I do. And that's why we're here today. And it's hard not to get,
Ditto.
I don't know,
Ditto.
yeah, see, it's hard not to get influenced by all these people around you who are successful and just making money because for the sake of making money.
Well,
it's a whole different.
even in the metal scene, you know how many, like, if you take the front cover of a metal magazine and you just say, what's John Kevill's odds that he likes that band? Do you want to, you think it's a high percentage? Fuck no. I'm pissed off at the state of metal as much as I am mainstream pop or whatever. It's like you can't make it really successful in metal unless you got fucking keyboards and costumes. Fuck that. Oh, this band's so amazing because they dress like this. I'll take a specific shot. Papa Emeritus to Cardinal Copia to whoever the fuck it's going to be now. Fuck you. This isn't a TV show. You're not like killing off the main character in a sitcom and replacing him. You're supposed to be making records. Your news announcements aren't about the records. That's how I can tell what you're actually about. Fuck you. Get out of the building. This is heavy metal and we care about the fucking art here.
Speaking of art, a lot of these bands are taking that art and doing the live streaming. And before we get into that, real quick, where's Patsy Cline? Do you have a cat with you?
Patsy Cline is it's Patsy Cline, yeah. Like
Patsy
there
Cline,
she
okay.
is.
There she is. Okay, I wanted to make sure, not just going crazy in the one-room apartment here, one-room home or whatever.
It's a one-room house, but
yeah.
It's a house in the back of another house, and that's sometimes I'm very thankful for everything we've accomplished in Warbringer, and sometimes I'm bitter as fuck. It's like, dude, I've been working for 12 years. I've played like 1,400 shows, and you know what? Warbringer doesn't even pay for the one-room house. It's my wife.
It's okay. You shouldn't
even have to support the one-room house in the back of another house with a 6-album band. That's the cliff I chose to jump off of, and so I can be bitter now, but I knew it and I chose this. So I kind of still am sometimes, but on the other hand, I'm really, really thankful for all the wonderful stuff I've done. So it's a lot, and it's kind of a weird, like, being this far into my career in music in 2020 during coronavirus and all this is kind of a weird emotional clusterfuck, because I have these contradictory emotions of being extremely thankful for what we have achieved and extremely bitter over what we haven't.
That's okay. You shouldn't even have to explain yourself to anybody, but you should always be okay with where you're at. You don't want to, be a fuck up, but I mean, that's if anybody tells you that you're a fuck up, that's your discretion. It's only you who get to make the calls of your life. And go ahead.
Well, heck, one of the things I wrote about it, because I don't really subscribe to the wherever you are, it's fine, you're supposed to be here. I've written a bunch of songs about kind of like disgust and self-loathing and wanting to strive for something better. You even see a couple on the current record. Defiance of Fate and Unraveling are kind of these two sides of a similar coin, of a guy sort of facing some existential challenge. Why am I here? What the fuck is the point of me? And in Defiance of Fate, the speaker creates this meaning of, I'm going to leave a legacy. I'm going to burn my flame into the cosmos, and it'll shine bright. And Unraveling, the guy's like, fuck it, And they're kind of two sides of the same coin. I find those two emotions, with me anyway, are a lot closer than I feel like they should be. And that's kind of a fucked up, weird thing in my own head. And I wonder if and in the past I wrote this song "Scars Remain" that was about, like, just I was in a tough time in my life. The band had fallen apart, and I'm like, was it because of me? And just that, and and if I think that, I shouldn't be okay with that. If I decide that I'm not where I want to be, well, I better fucking do something. Yeah. So all I can really do with the music, in Warbringer, is really just try to make the best records I can and work hard on it. But it's a tough uphill climb, and putting out a record during coronavirus is a bit like, fuck me, because we spent over like a year and a half making the thing, and we put it out, and we have to kind of just cross our fingers and hope people buy it, and that's pretty much all we can really do right now.
Yeah.
People talk about live streaming and stuff. That is no substitute for touring and merchandise. You can do something with that, but even the other day I participated in a live stream chat with like a couple of guys in bands on, like, that are a little below where Warbringer is commercially, and these guys are going like, shit, they're trying to like, they're on the live stream cap in hand practically, and it makes me sad because I like these guys. I support what they're doing. I want the metal scene to continue, but it just sucks that everything's forced to, basically because the business model on, unless you're in the top of the genre, the business model basically doesn't work. So all these bands are just cap in hand to the fans, which they are anyway. I'll point that out because metal bands don't make anything that doesn't come from the fans in the first place, but now they're asking for the fans' donations and generosity on top of purchases and support. And that's a line I'm really not willing to cross. I'm going to limit myself, and I've decided this a long time ago when this was all kind of new. No, my revenue stream will be limited basically to if you buy the music, a concert ticket, or merchandise. We'll sell you an actual product. I see a lot of bands that have just responded to post-internet music by things like paid meet and greet tickets, by, the worst one I'm aware of is like Winter Sun's Build Me a Studio Patreon crowdfunding thing, which sucks because I like that guy's records. I think he's the best in symphonic metal since like he did the fucking first album with that band.
Yeah.
And it just sucks to see either. And there's two ways to frame this. Either A, hey man, doesn't it suck that the guy's not able to do his art to the fullest extent with just selling it as with just the regular business model of, hey, I make music and sell it? Or B, doesn't it suck that the guy expects so much out of it that he's going to ask his fans to like give him the dream that's in his head instead of the reality that's in front of him? And I think both of those are kind of true. But in that case, too, so Warbringer is kind of, in some ways, decided, like, yeah, we're just going to kind of bite the bullet and do this completely for its own sake. And doing that over a decade now has cost a lot. Let me tell you. It's so I feel as if like I've kind of poured my life's blood into this thing, and now I'm so heavily committed that I just have to see it through, or what was all that all for? I'm in this weird catch-22, reminds me of like the kind of logic of the armies of the First World War after the first year. Well, shit, we just lost like 1 million guys in the first year, and this was supposed to all be over by now, and shit, this wasn't really, this is totally out of proportion to the things that started now. But we lost that 1 million guys, and we can't look like idiots now and say, oh, that was for nothing. So we got to continue and lose another few million, that the sunk cost fallacy, as they call it. Of course, I go to a war scenario in my head, but
that's okay because I know that you have interest in warfare and you have family who are also involved in that in the past. I
don't, not in the present though. Not in the last generation.
Is it your grandfather, or did I hear that correctly?
Great grandfather. Guy I never met. But died when my grandmother was 8. So
okay.
I just know he existed. Yeah. And I wonder if that's where it comes from. Do you need to consciously know things that happen to your line to know them or feel them? I don't know. That's kind of beyond my scope of knowledge.
Projecting himself into you, and then it's just everything coming out at once.
Yeah, that's maybe that's the voice on Glorious End or something. I don't know.
But I do want to touch on that a little bit later. Now, I want to follow up on everything that you just accumulated because it's a very popular topic of discussion, which I think it needs to be pushed out more. Do you think the quarantine-induced live streaming surge right now, is it going to affect the touring musician business going forward? Do you still see bands doing this even after all this is over? I hear so many different answers I had so many guests on the show, and I hear different answers left and right. Like, yeah, I still see, let's say Warbringer's doing a festival over in Europe and somebody maybe doesn't have access to it here in the States. You guys would sell a ticket digitally and, something like that. Just an example. But I feel you would have a lot on this topic.
Well, it's okay. So I can understand the appeal of live streams. I like to watch live concerts on video when I can't see them. Largely, I'm a musician. I want to see how good is this band with this lineup playing live. Like how close do they sound to their record, and then we compare ourselves to that because we have a standard of how we sound versus how our records sound that we try to keep way up there if we can. So I'm interested in watching live performances on video for that reason. By the same token, though, if you're doing I don't think personally, would I pay money for a band's live stream after this? My answer is hell no. Like I haven't done that during this. So basically, I don't see just because I don't see the appeal of it doesn't mean other people don't. I mean, shit, isn't like, the Kardashians are really famous. I have no idea why anyone would like them, but there they are. They're way more popular than me. So obviously I'm not a great barometer of what people in society in general think. I'm way off of that, and probably no one should listen to me if they want to figure out what's going to sell in 2020 America. But that's not why I'm here. I'm trying to make sweet thrash metal, and I don't care about what's going to sell in 2020 America. I care about what are really sweet thrash metal songs to me, and that's all I'm really here for. So I think that basically, to some extent, if you have a live, like during coronavirus, a live stream ticket thing makes sense because you can't actually get to a concert. If I could just go actually see a concert, why would I buy a ticket to some, if it's a live stream, not even of a concert, but of the band trying to simulate a concert setting as best they can? Isn't that kind of like a music video? Isn't that basically a music video with worse production values, to some extent?
Code Orange did that. I think they were the first bands to actually jump on that live streaming. I think it was right when we were experiencing the first wave of lockdowns. And they had a new album out, and then they streamed it for everyone to see. Like, it was an empty venue, and I don't know if you've seen this. It's like they did that, and then a lot of bands jumped on. Like Insomnium is another band. They actually sold tickets to fans digitally and did the live concert gig with that way. It could be a music video. Like that's another way to look at it.
It's because when you're actually shooting the music video, that's kind of what you're sitting there. More or less, you're doing the song just minus the amplification, basically. Because you have to make it look convincing. So if you're, and the band actually plays the song live, so we're the guitar player's hands are moving in the exact same way and all that. So it kind of feels like just a one-take music video in a way. I don't know. For me, it's it simply can't. So, like, watching a thing on your screen is absolutely never a substitute for being there. Think of like a concert you saw that was your favorite concert versus the videos you saw of that concert. Sure, you might enjoy the videos you saw of the concert, and it allows you to pick the performance apart, to look at individual parts of it. Oh, they did this cool thing in this song that's different from the record, and so on and so forth. This guy played this solo different. That stuff's fun. That's why live albums are cool and stuff. But it's like, can you consider this a substitute for a real concert? God, I hope not. I'm also but I'm not the only guy. Like Hologram Dio was a tour that they actually managed to sell and presumably make money on. There's no way in a million years I would be caught dead in that building, even if someone bought me a ticket. Never.
I can't believe they didn't pull that off. I thought it was a hoax, and they actually did it.
I wish it was a hoax. I wish, let the dead be dead. And that's another thing I'll say about metal in general is the genre's had a tough time, I think, reconciling basically the towering legacy of the many, many great artists and albums that formed the genre and made it into a genre versus kind of getting out of the shadow of those while also maintaining the things that made those great in the first place. And I think that's really the pickle that and sort of the artistic gauntlet that was not so much given to a band like us, but was sitting there on the ground, and we're trying to pick it up, because we like metal. But I think that the whole like post 2000s metal generation is kind of dealing with that you have this 30-year genre that started in 1970, had a immensely vibrant run of creative development for 20-something years, and then continued to do so even after 92 or wherever the original run of canon metal is usually considered to end. You still got like black metal being developed well into the mid 90s. Not everyone likes to consider this proper metal, but like, power metal, as we call it, hit its height in the mid late 90s before it became Mad Libs of itself, which is kind of what I think, I like me some power metal, but it all sounds like Mad Libs.
I love power metal. And then of course, if you want to include new metal, that came in like the late 90s as well. And that kind of
yeah.
I don't know.
And metal
it changed the game.
Stuff.
It wasn't cool. Like new metal was cool when it first came out. Then it wasn't cool, and now it's back to being cool again. It's like, I don't know. It's like back and forth. It does the example that you said about, metal being kind of just, I don't know, like it's advancing, but then it kind of just staggering to where it kind of just handing the baton over to the next generation. You know what I'm talking about? Those upper echelon bands, and then there are these bands who are trying to, I don't want to say replace them, but just carrying that tradition forward, and the musicianship, the sound, the growth of the genre and the fans, the culture.
Well, okay. You said I don't want to say replacement, and that's actually the barrel we're staring down as a musical culture and a scene. Is that you need replacement, and it's not there, and people aren't willing to talk about it because they feel like they would be disrespecting the gods, the people that made the great records that brought us all here in the first place by saying that. But the fact is, no one's immortal, and the gods aren't. They're guys. They're fucking dudes who wrote some great records. Some of them are still doing it. Some of them are still great live, fantastic. Some of them haven't been relevant for as long as I've been alive. Fact, some bands haven't made a great record since I could speak the English language, and that's sad. As a guy who really loves metal, that's fucking sad. When's the last record that came out that's universally regarded as a metal classic? Is it Rust in Peace, or is there anything after that? Is there?
That's true.
Slaughter of the Soul.
We're talking
Slaughter
decades
of the
back.
Soul.
By that definition,
that's
we're talking
30
like 2 decades ago.
Yeah, that's like 92. That's 28 years ago. I'm 33. I'm middle-aged now, and the last great universally lauded heavy metal record that appealed to every kind of metalhead, that's just considered a stone cold classic, 92. You could make a case, if you want to get into some of the more extreme stuff, that something like I don't know, Slaughter of the Soul, or even maybe Storm of the Lightsbane or something by Dissection, that one of those maybe. Slaughter of the Soul, certainly the riff style was really influential on the next 10-15 years, but even then I don't think that these are usually seen as the 10 out of 10 songwriting, musicianship, vocals, lyrics, everything that some of those 80s classics are seen as. Now it's subjective to a degree, but I'm talking about not even so much my opinion as the general aggregate opinion out there that I see. And as a metalhead, that just sucks. I don't like to think, I like a kind of music where all the best stuff is already made. On a fundamental level, I rebel against that. And so, yes, I think we do at some point need to be talking replacement in metal. What is our heir to the great records of yesteryear? And what can that look like? What can that be? And my answer, which you can see this philosophy reflected in the records we've made, is that, at least for me as a listener, it has to actually still be metal. It can't be post anything, or it's not that there's anything wrong with that.
A lot of kids are doing that.
Not that there's anything wrong with breaking genre conventions, even leaving the metal genre. That's fine. You can leave the metal genre. You can do interesting fucking music with it. But you can't scratch the same itch doing that you can going metal, in that classic fucking way that brought us all here, with wailing and shredding and riffs. And, I know wailing and shredding and riffs aren't a totally new idea, but I firmly believe that there's still a lot of creative exploration that can be done within those realms that isn't just, that walks this difficult tightrope between still playing the style of music we love versus progressing that style of music and making a new piece of art within it that's actually relevant and viable, that you could put up next to any of those hang it on your wall records and say, this is about as good,
One common denominator.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah, of course.
I could never ever, by definition of who I am and my relation to the work we're doing, I can never ever tell you if we've actually achieved that. All I can say is what I'm trying to do. I don't have the right to actually rate how we've done. That's for everyone else.
No, that's well said. One common denominator I was going to say with all the new music. I don't even want to say new music. You guys have been around for 16 years. It's
and we're a new band.
You a new band to
right,
considering what we're talking about.
That's my point though. You say, hey, I'm not talking about replacing anyone. It's dude, at what point do we?
Yeah, because a lot of fans are saying, and I'm hearing from Warbringer, from other bands, that they're saying, oh, this band, why aren't they getting enough recognition? And it's the same thing. I see the same thing with all these bands who've been around for long periods of time. It's like, it's, I don't know who makes these decisions, who decides, like, why are they here? Why isn't Warbringer where they're supposed to be? Or why isn't, another band, just any band. You could pick out any band who isn't Dio, who isn't Metallica, who isn't Megadeth, and just say, like, why aren't they where they're supposed to be? Why is it that they're still down here?
And the answer is because all the ones you named in the first place are still there forever and ever and ever. And it's not because I don't want them to be, but just like as a fan, do I like that all these bands are around? Yes and no. I have pros and cons. I like that I can see these bands play the songs I love live. I don't always love the additions made to the discography, which very often I don't even, you got your St. Angers and Lulus and stuff where the whole fan base is united in not liking them. But then even more than that, and I'm not, I think that there's this, I think that since younger bands started playing thrash metal around, give or take 2005 to 2008, the realm where bands like us and many, many others began playing 80s old school thrash metal and then traditional metal too. You got bands like Enforcer, Skullfist, etc. that started doing that. So I think the new wave of thrash metal was actually a part of just new wave of metal, not post, not core, not new, just fucking metal. And a new wave of old, if you will. And I think that genre, metal, classic metal, deserves to exist. I think that for me, classic metal, which includes like 5 or 6 main genres with all their permutations and stuff, is my favorite kind of music. And I believe that it's not fully artistically explored yet. I think there's new stuff you can do with it. I think there's actually a lot that a band like us can do when we're pretty much looking back at the 80s and 90s and the whole original development arc. Pretty much we can take ingredients that were never combined before and combine them. For instance, why did no one ever do a version, why did no one, as far as I'm aware, no one ever did a song that kind of followed the line of thinking, what if you took like Fade to Black, One, Cemetery Gates, any of those, and had it go into Viking Bathory, Twilight of the Gods shit? That didn't exist yet. We made a song like that. It's called Defiance of Fate, and that was actually our
Great
logic
song.
as we wrote it. We're like, hey, no one's done. We're trying to get one of those like half ballad numbers, Sanitarium, Metallica does a lot of them. Pantera has a couple. Testament tried their hand at. All the bands did. It became a songwriting convention of 80s thrash, and we had never done one of those because actually 80s thrash, something I'll diverge here. 80s thrash is actually a much wider genre than people give credit for. People act like it's all one thing. It's mindless riffs and aggression. It's like, no. There's technical thrash. There's progressive thrash. There's punk rock leaning thrash, which we called crossover. There's just like straight down the middle Bay Area style. There's the German school. There's stuff
black
that's
metal and thrash, because there's a song you did that you had black metal vocals in there. I absolutely love that song.
Yeah.
So
That's
good.
The one we were just talking about.
And as the fan to me, I have to get this out there. I think vocally, this is your best record because you reached. I think because I've been a fan since World of the Vanquish. Before that, what was it? The second album. I can't remember what it was. It was back in like 2009.
Waking into Nightmares.
Yeah. That's what I was. I said World of the Vanquish. I was like, that was your last record. But I think you reached like it. Like it's like when it comes to thrash metal vocals, the two people that come in mind with this record when I listen to this, Bobby Blitz and Petroza from Creator. Those are heavily like influenced musicians. They bring a lot of influence into the musicians we see today. But man, when I hear your voice in Weapons of Tomorrow, I'm just like, I mean, it's this guy. This guy's got it. Like when it comes to thrash metal vocals, this is the epitome of it's a very humble statement. I'm going to put that out there, but I want you to know that the fan in me really appreciates the work that you actually put out there, and I think you guys did reach the top of your game with Weapons of Tomorrow. I mean, just putting that out there.
I genuinely appreciate it, and again, like I said, it's not ultimately for me to decide how good we are, but I'm really glad you think that because that's like a mission accomplished for me. Hearing that, okay, we actually are doing stuff where fans and people out there see the music we're making, how I would hope, how my wildest dreams of what they might see it like are. And that tells me that I'm going the right way, and that tells me that I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And that tells me also, I think that I feel like we're in part carrying sort of a mantle forward, and we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for anybody who basically feels the way we do, that wants this genre of music to not only survive and continue, but to prosper and expand and to make new classics. That's not an endless tribute to the same list of like 30 or 40 great albums that we all know and love, that it doesn't become like a more extreme version of classic rock radio, which is just sad how little of classic rock they actually play on classic rock radio,
Yeah.
that it's going to continue to be what brought a guy like me or you here in the first place, which is a vibrant, interesting, artistically legitimate genre. So I'll take all kinds of nods to all my favorite music in the songwriting. My whole theory of how to write a song in terms of having a setting and stuff is like basically derived from a deep study of fucking Iron Maiden songs,
It seems like you just tapped into a whole different dimension of John at this record. And I'm all for the black metal vocals. I think you should just keep doing that for as long as you can, because if you keep doing that, I mean, who knows what other new just parts you will explore about yourself vocally and artistically that you just might just untap. It's great to see the growth of Warbringer from where you guys first started to where you are now. And like I said, we're in that same conversation again. You guys got to beat that next band. You guys shouldn't be down here. You should be up here. Like, why aren't you guys up here?
Well, it's funny because, okay, so our story had been a little seesaw, and I feel like we got a ton of support from the music industry like the first year or so the band was around, because we were young and novel. And then what kind of bugs me and sticks in my craw is that then we got older, and we weren't like, hey, look, there's an 18-year-old playing 80s thrash. That's quite a novelty, But we made way better albums than our first album consistently after that. I would say that the general criticism of the band of basically being totally derivative of 80s thrash, that is basically viable on the first album. Like, I would probably agree with a lot of that. I think, and when I look at myself that way, I'm willing to be, I have to be critical of myself because otherwise I don't progress.
Yeah.
So when I look at my first, the band's first record, these were some of the first songs I ever wrote in my life. I had no musical background. Born of the Ruins, I think, was the second Warbringer song ever written, and it's on the record, and we went from there. The first one ever written didn't make it, but the second onward, so like songs 2 through 11 that the band had ever written are on that record. And I'll point out too, people act just because the black metal stuff entered vocally on this record, people say, oh, Warbringer discovering this new black metal side, and I'll point out we've had that since day one. At the Crack of Doom, all tremolo. That's a straight black metal riff. You could put that on, anything from Norway. It wouldn't sound so out of place. The melodic style, everything, the tremolo. So I think that, and we've kept doing that shit since. I think to some extent or another. Last record had a ton of it. Guns Fell Silence got Bathory all over it.
Yeah, that was like an 11-minute song. It didn't feel like 11 minutes though. I'll say that.
Well, hey, on Long Song. So I actually think that song, that it's 11 minutes on purpose, because it's designed to be about kind of the soul training experience of living through the Great War and just like, God, you get out on the other side and you won, but there's just nothing left for you, and you're, somewhere I left my soul and rotting on the battlefield there, and that's the lost generation narrative and everything. And quite frankly, I don't think as an artist I can express that feeling, which is something I'm trying to express because I read a bunch of stuff where people talk about those themes that they actually went through. And if the song was like 3 minutes, I don't think it really captures having gone through 4.5 years of arduous hell and then feeling drained and empty at the end. If it's 3.5 minutes and snappy, you might not get the sense that you just passed through an epoch and there's nothing left of you. So I think sometimes one person actually told me once, that song's too long, and I responded, "You're wrong."
It's not. It's not. I remember in one of your, I know in one of your interviews, I don't know which one it was. You said something. I think it's very important because it shows how much dedication you have to your craft. You want the music and the lyrics to match, like to come together. and because it tells a story, and depending on the subject matter, you want the listener to feel. I think it was a sense of exhaustion from warfare. That's why it was 11 minutes long, and that's genius. I think there's just, when it comes to songwriting, that's how you got to do it. And
well, and I agree. And what this all comes from is basically looking at what used to actually be common and standard among great metal bands. That's what I think. I think that, okay, Aces High, it puts you in the cockpit, fucking Disposable Heroes. Hey, when he says barking of machine gun fire, the guitar sounds like a machine gun. That's effective. Yeah. That's basic shit right there. And the Trooper, when you're talking about riding on a horse, the guitar is a horse gallop. Basic shit, But this idea of the lyrics and the music have to match, that's not like some new thing I came up with. I feel like that's a thing the whole genre I'm a part of used to do standard issue and now forgot all about, because you're just trying to be brutal and have sick riffs and you don't really care why or how.
Have your aspirations as a person or an artist, have they evolved since you first started playing music? Do you see things differently now?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, when I started this, I didn't know why I was doing it. It's been like 12 years of introspection and, here's some personal information I'll volunteer. The night we put out the record, my wife and her sister and I tripped on LSD, and I spent like 12 hours thinking about why, because I just put out the record. So I'm like, why am I here? Why am I still doing this? What is what am I trying to achieve as an artist? What is the relation of, the relevance of metal in 2020 as an art form, and what's my place in it? So, I was tripping out on that for like 12 hours. I couldn't get to sleep. But yeah, absolutely. All this thought wasn't all there before I ever did it. I kind of just had to jump off like I was talking at the beginning, I sort of jump off this cliff where I'm like, okay, I'm going to kind of give up any chance of having a remotely normal life. And, I haven't. And I'm going to be this weird fucking dude, who screams at stuff and isn't out in the margins, railing against everything. And that's what I've chosen to be. And here I am, so it's, I didn't know I was gonna, I kind of had a sense that that's what I was doing on the first record, but what that all meant and why is very different. And you'll notice the lyrical evolution, I think, goes with this, because at first I'm kind of generally angry and talking about violent stuff in a very non-specific kind of way where it's just whatever sounds badass and rhymes, because I mean,
you're 18 years old, man. We're 18 years old. I think we're all doing that at that time.
There's some good rhymes on those, some good tough rhymes. I enjoy, Hell on Earth got one, a shotgun blast straight to the head, leaving your wake a trail of dead. I can get down with shit like that still, even though I'm trying to write more advanced lyrics now. I still like, just straight up, but I need, as I go on and on in my career, I have to justify to myself, why am I still here? What am I still have to add? Because I don't ever want to be one of those guys who's putting out a record that's pretty much like, okay, take the record that all the fans of our band do like, and let me just try to check all those boxes again so we can sell it. And I can't, I would hate it. I would hate to do that. I feel
everyone
like
does
every
it.
Record, no, not us, dude. We try to fucking beat ourselves.
That's the point.
Every single record, and we really do. And part of that's because we're relentlessly hard on ourselves, and we're willing to do things like say, oh yeah, our first record was basically derivative and it was a starting point, we're moving from there. And I'm fine with that because of what we've managed to accomplish as a result of this kind of relentless self-criticism and self-improvement. And I think one of the reasons we do that, in a way, I think more so than, at least from the outside, it looks like that other bands do, is because we're still in the one-room house that we can't even pay for with the band. We're still hungry. We still have a chip on our shoulder. We still have so much to prove because we're still a new band, 6 albums. And I think that actually, the sort of lack of recognition and lack of, kind of accomplishment for how much we've accomplished, I think that pisses everyone off to some extent. And I think everyone, we've played with bands where like these guys couldn't play our songs if they tried, and they're headlining the festival and everyone's like, hey, doing some hokey bullshit, and I'm just like, Christ, man, shit. It's a stalwart refusal to play to the lowest common denominator. Never. We're never ever gonna write a song based on like what's the most relatable to like the average guy. Shit, you know. I guess the most popular food then is like is white bread with nothing on it, right? You know, shit. It's not gonna offend anybody's tastes, is it? You know. So that's just not the way we think, and we're trying to go our own direction as hard as possible, and basically we don't really ever expect to any even kind of the recognition this album just received is a bit of a surprise to us, because it's like, oh, people actually noticed kind of what we've already been doing differently for like, I don't know, 3 albums now. People say like, and you remarked there's this black metal influence. That's not new. The death metal influence, that's not new. Had it since album 2. All we're doing is continuing the same path we've already set by like album 2, which I think by album 2, you can no longer say we're derivative of 80s thrash because of basically the nature of the rhythmic performance on that record and some of the technicality and kind of the just incorporation of modern metal level musicianship playing 80s style metal. I think that's really the difference, and that it's also that we have some guys like Nick Ritter, who's died some years ago, who only played on Waking into Nightmares. I think he did a lot to really shift this band in a different direction, because he wasn't even a thrash metal guy. People were telling us at that time, oh, there's worship of this whole list of thrash metal bands. Like Nick Ritter, the guy who's playing drums on that record, doesn't even know half of those, nor does he need to, because he's about, he was into like Meshuggah, Dillinger, Escape Plan. The guy's playing the techiest shit on drums for the sake of playing the techiest shit on drums. And we put this guy who had who was like older than the rest of us, who felt that he's like, I'm this really talented drummer who's put my life into playing drums and I can't get a decent gig, and he ends up playing with these kids that are younger than him, which was us. And that having a drummer like that who's like, yeah, I've been playing for like 12 years and doing nothing else, that none of us were at that level, and that kind of pushed the band into this new, more technical direction. And we kept it ever since, and we've been sharpening the musicianship throughout the whole band on every record. Now it's way above where it was on album 2, And I think that was a really, like, this one unique guy who was a unique player who's kind of from outside the thrash metal scene, I think kind of came into the band and just rush writing this record with him, because that one was written and recorded in under 2 months. Kind of changed the sound and showed us how we were going to be different.
Man, that's we're talking about a span of 16 years of just everything that you've experienced. What was your? I'm going to transition into touring, because you guys did tour a lot extensively, around the world. What was your favorite part about touring? There's food, culture, fans. Now you're 2 months into quarantine, like we all are. You're stuck at home. Does it kind of just give you kind of like just like a step back, and maybe does it make you appreciate that life even more?
Well, touring has a way of making you not appreciate that life by day 3. It's
okay.
I've done it. I've done well. That's the truth, because okay, it's like you wreck yourself to play a thrash metal show. You really do. To play at least a Warbringer show to the standard that we insist on playing for our fans. That doesn't just include tight musicianship and all that. That also includes, we've got to bang our heads the whole fucking set. When we get off the stage, I can wring out my shirt and it's like I got into a swimming pool every single night. One of the issues I have is I'll bring 20 black t-shirts, and very often I can't take them off my body because they'll tear because they're too full of sweat. I need like a new black t-shirt every fucking night I'm on stage, because I ruin my body that hard, and I insist on doing so 15 years into it, and so does the rest of the band. So that's another thing too. We feel, of course we do, as if you want to see like the hardest raging band you can see today, that it's basically us, and we insist on being that way because that's what we set out to be. That takes a toll on you, and it's really not easy doing that even one night, let alone 2, let alone 3, because the kind of repeated strain accumulates. And that's, for me, the really tough part to deal with. Is I'll get physically beaten down, and then it's really hard to keep the mindset, and that's the key. Because as soon as I start feeling like, I feel like shit all day. What am I doing? Then it's really hard for me to enjoy it. So it's actually touring is really emotionally and mentally difficult above all else. On the last tour the last tour was 54 shows, 0 days off.
That was with an Enforcer, wasn't it?
Yes. And so 54, just, sing along to any Warbringer song, take your pick, and you'll notice your throat's probably getting pretty sore at the end. You're probably pretty out of breath. And then you got to do 10 more of those and then do that every day while headbanging, and then you're in a bus the rest of the time and etc. So it's, or a van, that tour, 54 days, we had to do a bus, God, even though they're brutally expensive.
Yeah.
It's just here's something that happened in Pittsburgh about halfway through the tour. I tore a shoulder cuff or something because I was headbanging and night after night, night 28 or something, I'm up there just headbanging like I always do, and in my rear right shoulder I get this pain that sticks with me till a month and a half after the tour is over. So the whole rest of the tour, 25 more shows, I'm on there banging my head going ow, 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 while finishing the show every night. And so it's that's not, that's what you got to do if you want to play metal, basically. Where we are at, we didn't get to choose to have days off there. We don't choose the shows necessarily. We have an agent who kind of makes all these contracts, sometimes whether we do or don't want to. We actually parted ways with that particular agent for this reason, but it's, because we didn't get a say in how many shows you're playing where and how long. It's just, here's 54 shows, no days off, make it happen. And I'm like, oh God, I'm 30. I'm turning 33 right after this tour. I can't do that anymore. Well, as it turns out, I can. It's just, oh God.
I mean, you're going to tear some things along the way, but sure.
Yeah, and what I start wondering now is, as I get older, is how much can I actually maintain while keeping the standard of performance and vocal delivery that I kind of insist on having. Because if I don't want to be 35 doing this worse than I was at 30, then I have no reason to exist as an artist. And in my own view, I should get the fuck off the stage. So there's kind of this relentless pressure we put on ourselves to always be a little as good or a little better as we were yesterday. And it's kind of in reaction to a lot of the legacy stuff you see, not just in thrash, but in the whole genre, and the lack of replacement that pisses us off. We're never going to, it's kind of something, I don't think we actually spelled this out to ourselves, but I think the underlying motive is we're never going to be a band that people feel like we feel about all the stuff that's disappointing us in metal today. We're never going to be that band. We're going to make our best faith effort run at coming up with one of the most rock solid discographies in metal history. Because otherwise, if we're not at least aiming for that, why be a band? Why spend 15 or more years of your life on this if you're not going to try to actually accomplish something meaningful that you would care about? So that's that's the pressure that we put. It's justify our own reason for existing. That's the daily pressure of us. We have to offer a superior alternative to kind of what else is out there. We don't have a reason to exist artistically. So we break our damn bodies in trying to do that. And that's why tour's not that fun, because it's the crucible. It's the crucible. Can you actually, John, I say to myself, John Kevill, can you actually walk your own fucking walk, motherfucker? And the answer is, oh, God, I think so,
Okay. Let me ask you the $1 million question then. Is it worth it?
I didn't live my other life. I didn't live my alt history life where I didn't do this. I can't answer that. I would have to have lived a different life where I didn't and compare them. I can't. But I can say I'm happy that and I'm proud of what we have accomplished. And just like that song Defiance of Fate, Defiance of Fate or Divinity of Flesh on the last album is songs about legacy and what you leave behind. And so, fuck, I might die a poor man for all I know, but I made these records, and you can listen to those and you can know something about the human being I am and what my spirit is and what I think about after I'm dead. If I got hit, I live near the airport. If I got Donnie Darko'd and a jet engine fell through my roof right now, I could say I made 6 albums, and you could, let's say we never had this talk, you would still know something about me, what's going on in my head and my heart based on what I put out on record. So that's the thing I tell myself when I need to give my some wind in my sails to keep myself moving forward. Heavy metal is, to some extent, self-punishment for the musicians. I'm going to play, one of the least commercially viable forms of music that's the hardest to play and the most strenuous live on stage with the most stringent and expectant fan base. Why would you play that one? That's the worst option, clearly. But no question. There was never a question for me. I'm playing heavy fucking metal or nothing, And I think that kind of when it's an overused term, and I think it's often used to refer to a sound and not a mindset. But true metal means something to me, and that's what it means. You're here to try to explore the high arts of shred for its own sake, and you're going to be howling in the void, dealing with what I'd call some Werner Herzog shit, basically, because that's what metal deals with. It's not, you don't get the metal song that's so relatable about how you had a day and it was nice, or how having money is sweet, or how being famous is sweet. Those aren't really things that metal tends to tackle. It's like ancient warriors and and existential horror and what's the meaning of my life and Satan and God and all this shit. The big stuff, the not relatable stuff, the stuff that requires imagination. So I really, when people say relatable, sometimes I feel like that's like something has to be relatable. That's like a byword for it needs to fit in a really narrow frame of reference, or I'm not willing to imagine what it would be like to live that thing they're talking about. When to me, that's the whole point. That's what makes it interesting. So again, I feel like if you're really, really doing, the metal industry, are they going to support a band like Warbringer? No, because let's look at it this way. If a band like Warbringer, not just Warbringer, Havoc, Toxic Holocaust, Power Trip, Municipal Waste, you name them, if one of those gets to to where you can headline like a 1,000+ seat club shows regularly across the world, right? Then that takes market share from the existing legacy bands that are currently doing that. The market share is only so big. It's directly against the interests of the established old guard to have really successful new bands. It's in their interest to have new bands that are successful to a degree, but not beyond, to where you can have an opening act, basically, that your fans want to hear. But beyond that, no, it's absolutely not in their interest to have new bands that are successful the way that their bands were successful, that puts them in the place they are. And one thing think about it. If you're Testament, Megadeth, Overkill, name them, you don't want another band basically in your exact commercial shoes. You don't want another band competing for the limited market share of thrash metal, or at least not at your level. You'd prefer it if they're you'd prefer it basically if you could pay them 10% of the total show guarantee and have them be your opening band.
Okay, let me ask you this. What do you think, what's the next step to maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say, is it broken? Is the system broken? And when it comes to metal industry, what do you think should happen? What do you want to happen? If it was up to you.
Well, okay. So the thing is, it's all the invisible hand of the market, as they say, that decided all this. So, what is the next step? I don't know. As far as I can tell, maybe it's a band like us needs to basically stay the course until everyone who came before us is quit or dead. And then maybe we can succeed as we dream about. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm not.
The simplest explanation is the right one. What's that? What is that called? Is that Murphy's Law?
That's Occam's razor.
Occam's razor.
And
Sorry,
Occam's razor.
Murphy's law is whatever can happen will happen. But hey, you could
whatever can go wrong will go wrong. That's Murphy's law.
Yeah.
So here's an example of Murphy's law. Warbringer spends a year and a half recording and writing and remixing their, just perfect their follow up to the critically acclaimed Woe to the Vanquished, and comes out during coronavirus, can't tour. That feels like Murphy's law to me.
Everyone who's listening. Okay, John corrected me. It is Occam's razor. We got that all figured out.
Occam's razor is a great one. Okay, basically, here's I'm going to bum a lot of people out when I say this. If you think the moon landing was faked, or the shape-shifting reptiles run the deep state, or the Earth is flat, or any number of or even that coronavirus was on purpose, I got news for you. Occam's razor shreds that shit like a paper shredder. It destroys conspiracy theories wholesale. If you got your annoying conspiracy friend, just pull out Occam's razor and you will wreck their shit every time. That's the beauty of it. It's there's an old book called the Maleficus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, and it's also the name of a Sweet Pestilence album, their debut. But
wow, you threw that back.
Yeah. So, anyways, so Occam's razor is like the witch's hammer against bullshit. The Maleficus Maleficarum, it was this book that would teach witch hunters or inquisitors how to find a witch, how to identify it, and how to tell who the witchcraft people, who the witches are, so you can burn them. The Occam's razor's like that, but with bullshit that doesn't fly. So, basically, let's say the moon landing was faked, right? So either A, they actually did it and that was real footage, right? That's one explanation. Or B, somehow they staged all of that and all the funding went to where it was and it was all false channels and it was a grand conspiracy that would have to involve like hundreds and hundreds of people, and NASA, the whole organization, would have to be in on it, and they'd have to film that footage in a studio with all the things, the flag's got wind in it or whatever, and that would all have to be true. Which one's more likely? Or maybe they just fucking actually did it.
You see both sides. You see both sides of the spectrum. Like, it's, some people are for it, some people are like, oh no, this didn't happen. What are you talking about? No.
Dude,
and they have all these theories, just an endless list of theories. We could go on this topic forever, man. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, and just because people on two different sides say two different things doesn't mean they're equally valid. A lot of stuff people say is just flat out not true, and people can firmly believe something to the bottom of their core and be completely fucking wrong. That's totally possible. Has been all throughout time. So the idea that just because two people say two different things, that somehow the right course has got to be this balanced view taking both into account equally. No, sometimes the right course is this guy's right and that guy was fucking, had no validity to anything they said. So that's often the right course, I think. It's not like you can just be hasty with judging which one's which. You got to be very careful about that. But just because two people say two different things doesn't mean that the truth's in the middle. Sometimes the truth's entirely on one side because one dude was fucking, didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And sometimes even the guy who didn't know what the hell they were talking about, that they could be a goddamn professor, they could be brilliant. They could still be wrong as fuck, So I think very often, especially when you talk about like, modern politics, right? Where being in the center of two positions, like if one position's crazy, it isn't very centrist, is it?
Well, two things, because we're actually in the last segment of the podcast. Two things. I need you to come back on the show because this was great.
To get mad at shit.
This is great. We could talk. Can you imagine how many subjects we could just talk about just for endless? This is just valuable information. Number two, if you ever want to start your own podcast, I am all for that, dude. Because there's just so much that I feel like John's mind could just unleash out there. I just think you have such a valuable insight on a lot of things many people aren't even touching on, or maybe just are afraid to talk about. But I think it's just valuable information that I think just coming from someone who's actually experienced everything in between when it comes to being in the industry. Again, I'm going to do industry this way because, it's, I think it's just important. So last part, So I just want to throw it out there. So last part, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. So I think I'm already
Hot
giving
seat?
myself away. I do this with all my guests, and a lot of them have fun with it. Some of them get it, some of them don't. I'm going to read out lyrics. You're going to tell me what song it's from, but I'm pretty sure you got every song down to the T in your head, don't you?
Are these Warbringer songs or just any songs?
These are Warbringer songs. I'm going to say you know your own songs like you say you do, okay?
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's find out.
And I think you were actually reading my mind with some of the selections I had, because you did name them throughout this podcast, which is pretty impressive. All right, so let me start this off here.
But I'll tell you, on the reading mind thing, psychics are on the list of things that Occam's razor destroys. they're top of that list.
There's another topic we can just add on next time. All right, man, let's do this thing. Endless streams of machine gun fire. The battleground becomes a tomb.
And then it's something. Toxic fumes is that the middle break of combat shock after surprise attack.
Wow, you even got the section right.
Of course I do. I have to know the section in order to sing the song. Now, if you pull out some like shit we never play, that's tougher. But combat shock is the traditional closer of every Warbringer set.
It's actually one of my favorites from you guys, and I love that's on your first record. That's even that much more impressive. Okay. Smoke rises from the desert as the lines begin to bleed together in the blackness with presence unknown.
Black Sun, Black Moon, first two.
Yep. You already knew it, like, by the second line. You're like...
I'm pretty good with remembering lyrics.
So long the church has stood, a silent witness through the ages.
Notre Dame outro verse.
That
I'm not even letting you finish. I'm showing you how fast I got this shit. Notre Dame outro verse. I'll tell you about that verse though.
Yeah.
So the rest of the song, you'll notice all the parts before that are kind of from the within the Hunchback of Notre Dame story, right? You'll notice there's like a Quasimodo figure looking at the gargoyle, going, "Why am I not made of stone?" And then the third verse takes this different thing. So the idea was, we got the title on this demo for Notre Dame when because Adam and Carlos wrote all the riffs the day the cathedral burned, and they learned about that, and so they titled the demo that, and then I found that significant and powerful, so I wrote the song this way. What we ended up doing, there's actually 3 voices. The first voice is the crowd at the Festival of Fools mocking Quasimodo and being like, "Ha, you thought you could be like us? You're a freak. We'll never accept you." And then the second part is Quasimodo fleeing from that, feeling like, "Oh God, this is horrible. They'll never accept me. I will never be a part of the world." And he looks at the gargoyle and goes like, "Why am I not made of stone? Why do I have to feel it's a curse upon me?" And then the third part then leaves that behind. It's like you zoom out from the cathedral, and now I guess the question I'm trying to put in the listener's head is like, oh, well, now that this place, this link to all these famous stories is burned, what happens to the stories?
Interesting.
God, so the song's got 3 narrative voices.
That just gives the song just that much more depth if it hadn't already. Real quick. Real quick. Again, so you did mention Carlos. This is one topic I did want to talk about. I mean, let's see if we can knock this out really quick. If I'm correct, Carlos writes the songs with you and the guitar riffs, correct?
Carlos is probably the primary writer and arranger on this record. He probably wrote more than any other member. Adam and I are also heavily involved, though. And, we have different skills, and we've gotten pretty good at everybody working with each other's skills. Carlos is really, really great, especially as like an organizer and an arranger. So he writes parts, but he also writes parts and arrangements out of other people's parts, namely Adam especially, who just cranks out great riffs by the truckload. And then I'm often in there working with Carlos on the structural arrangement and the theme parts. Like, what's this song supposed to be about? What's it supposed to feel like? What vibes are you supposed to get? And I'll take like my thematic concept and I'll dig up songs we both know, and I'll be like, kind of like this, but different in this way. This part kind of like this vibe, so I can give Carlos a concrete musical frame of reference for the kind of ephemeral vibe I'm going for.
Because on the Science of Thrash, that mini documentary you guys just put out recently, I believe it was the first one. Carlos is sitting there playing the riffs. So I'm like, wait, does he play the riffs and he turns around to play the drums on the record? Like, what's the story there for the people or the fans who don't know?
Basically, Carlos Cruz has taken on a lot of roles in the band, and is one of the most talented musicians in metal today. Full stop. One of the, I
Agreed.
don't know any. I don't know any musician in any band right now that I would trade Carlos Cruz for. Quite frankly, any band, living or dead. Seriously,
Yeah.
guy is really amazing, and I developed this new songwriting partnership with Cruz because early in the band's career, I had never written a song, and as I, who don't play an instrument, was only able to get my ideas and work into the songs because of my close writing relationship with John Locks, who was our original founding guitar player. Carlos has stepped into those shoes, and he's developed a way of working with me that's like surpassed where I was before. So we're able to do stuff like Glorious End was written entirely lyrics first. All the lyrics.
And he just plugged everything in.
He plugged everything in according to I showed him like clips from movies and stuff to give him the vibe. I showed him different songs, and he did a lot of the guitar riffs in that song are Adam. So he arranged different Adam riffs in a different way than Adam had done it to lyrics and vocals that I had laid down. So guys just got a real talent for seeing the big picture of music and not just thinking of it as a drummer, but as a songwriter. And it's because the dude's able to play guitar and drums and, a lot of other things you put in front of him. The dude pretty much said, many years ago, music is my life. That's all I want to do. And he's walked that walk ever since. So having a dude like that in our band is just a huge asset. And quite honestly, a lot of the last two records, there's probably more Carlos Cruz writing on there than any other one member. Now, for me, I'm doing the lyrics, and that's something he doesn't really touch. So there's a mutual respect between us where basically we both regard each other as being very good at the thing we do, and we're really willing to bend ourselves to work around the other guy's ideas. So like I said, Carlos worked a lot to make Glorious End, basically to basically dig it out of my head and make it exist. He had to work to do that, and it's a different process because of who plays what, but Defiance of Fate, Carlos wrote that whole thing mostly for himself personally, in an instrumental level, and he's like, could we even do this as a Warbringer song? The verse is ballady, and I'm like, I will figure it out. I'm going to make it happen because I think it's a great fucking song, and so I bend myself and tried a whole new vocal style to make that work, because I don't think the regular Warbringer bark would work so well in the verse.
It's a great song, but that's I mean, I can easily see that.
Those are my two favorites on the record. Those two, right. I think I like the epic stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So Carlos is an amazing dude, and he's not like a shredder the way that say Chase Becker is. That's not the aspect of guitar he focuses on, but he focuses on basically he played a lot of the riffs in the studio because true to being a drummer, the dude's got a really tight rhythm hand. So it's a mixture of him and Adam tracking the rhythms for guitar. So he's been hugely involved in the last two records especially, and has been a big, for anyone who doesn't know how much Carlos Cruz does in this band, he's kind of, he's kind of like the Hetfield and Lars rolled in one to some extent, and that I'm the dude figuring out the lyrics and the imagery and a lot of that. So I feel greatly privileged to work with not only him, but all the musicians we have are extremely talented, and it's the same hunger that I described. These guys absolutely feel the same way. And Carlos is a guy who's going to play music till the day he dies, no doubt. Because that's what he was born to do, as far as I'm concerned.
Man, that's awesome. I just saw that talent. I was like, man, I have to ask John this, because this is a whole different part of Warbringer I've not seen yet, and the way you guys the composition when the music comes together as a unit. I love that you guys did the Science of Thrash. It shows just the whole scheme, like how you guys actually do your work. So, all right.
Yeah, we called it a science. We called it the science and not the art, because it's an art too. But we call it a science because we put so much thought and detail into how we do it, because we think we kind of have to do that in order to develop something that is metal, but is also new and artistically viable. Basically, we have to put that much thought into it, or we can't hope to add to the genre that put out your Rain and Blood, Master of Puppets, Rust in Peace, Power Slave, etc., etc.
Yeah. All right, so we got the last song. I got one last song, and you did call this out. Nothing is left save a few, now struggling to survive.
Pray for Death.
Born of the Ruins.
Wait. Nothing is Born of the Ruins. Yeah, you're right. Shit.
Yeah, that's from the demo.
Like, well, there you go. I fucked one up. You got me. Yeah, nothing. I haven't played Born of the Ruins forever. Yeah, you're right. Nothing. That's like line 2, verse 1. Yeah.
Hey, you got that part, so I guess I have to you there.
Yeah,
then, John,
then it's like only the strong don't die is the rhyme at the end of that. It's not a great line. Yeah.
So you got any last shout outs or anything you want to promote just before we finish things off?
Well, just thanks to those who listened for listening to all these thoughts about things. It's the best I can do in lieu of playing a concert for you. But we appreciate anyone who likes and supports the record, and if you haven't heard it, check it out. And I hope I didn't oversell it and to disappoint you.
Not at all.
We tried our best to write the best metal we can here in 2020, and that's because we believe in metal as a legitimate art form, and that's we'll go to our grave saying that.
And everyone who's listening, make sure you tune into The Science of Thrash. It's the mini documentary Warbringer is putting out. The second episode already went live, I believe, a couple weeks ago. Is this a weekly thing, correct?
It went live on Tuesday, and the third and final part will be out on Wednesday. They're like 15 minutes each. And I actually wrote, to make these, I wrote up a 17-page script to outline the process as I remembered it happening so we could actually organize it on camera. So I've been taking a lot of roles in some of the media stuff, like the Glorious End lyric video. I had to go and like every photograph you find in there, I had to go dig up and send the guy and stuff because I wanted a certain aesthetic. So I've been taking a real hands-on role in some of the media stuff we're doing. And that's kind of the best I can do, I think, during coronavirus. And the documentary was an attempt to give you some stay-at-home and watch-it content that's a little more substantive than here we are talking on camera or here we are live streaming a song. Here's something special and different, and it's important to us that it's not a gimmick in any way. It's focused on the songs. It's focused on the music, because that's who we want to be as a band.
So there you go, guys. If you heard it here first, this is it. You saw the work behind The Science of Thrash, and that's what that is. Tune into the next episode. And Weapons of Tomorrow, guys, it is out on Napalm Records. Came out April 24th. Support Warbringer, please. They're one of the guys who are doing it right, and they'll be back on the road sooner than you know. And this podcast can be heard on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, all podcast streams. John, thanks again, brother. We will have you on the show again. This is
it was fun.
We could go on forever, and stay safe out there, brother.
We are the order. You obey.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Interview Under Fire podcast. If you guys liked what you heard, please subscribe and share our channel. And please leave a 5-star review, as that helps us tremendously. And also, if you guys have any questions or comments, you can find us at Interview Under Fire at Facebook or at Instagram. Or you can write us directly at schwag@interviewunderfire.com. That's SCHWAG at interviewunderfire.com. Or Rezablade. That's REZABLADE at interviewunderfire.